My name is David, and although I never imagined returning to the countryside, I ended up here. After a few years of turmoil, I made the decision to leave the city behind and rent a small house in a rural area near Springfield. The plan was simple: find a bit of peace, leave behind the thoughts that haunted me, and start over. What I didn't know was that this peace would soon turn into my worst nightmare. Since childhood, I've always had a strange connection to cornfields. Something that stuck with me from when I lived with my parents on a small farm near Kansas City, but I thought I had moved past that. When I found this house, it seemed perfect, modest, affordable, and with enough land to walk around and breathe fresh air. The only thing that unsettled me a bit was the enormous cornfield right behind the house. It was so close that if I stretched my arm out the window, I could almost touch the fence separating it from my backyard. At first, I didn't think much of it. I told myself it was normal, that this was just part of country life. But as the days passed, I started to notice that its closeness didn't bring comfort, but a strange, creeping unease. It was as if that cornfield was always there, looming, watching, and though it might sound like an exaggeration, anyone who's ever been alone, surrounded by complete silence, will know exactly what I mean. The first few nights were peaceful. I got used to the sound of the wind, the crickets, and that quiet that at first felt pleasant. But in time, that feeling changed. If you love horror stories, subscribe and hit the bell icon. What I'm about to share, I still struggle to believe it myself. I was never someone who scared easily. I'm a skeptic, always looking for a logical explanation before considering anything strange. But this time, there was no logic that could soothe what I was about to go through. That house, that cornfield, everything seemed ordinary, until one night, something made it clear that coming here had been a mistake. And it wasn't just what I saw, it was what I felt. Because the most terrifying thing isn't always what's in front of us, but what hides just beyond the darkness. And here, that darkness was far too close. It happened on one of those nights when the air turns colder and the sky is covered with heavy clouds that everything changed. I remember it was mid-October, right after the first rains. I stepped out into the backyard as usual, cigarette in hand, enjoying that chill that, oddly enough, brought me some peace. The moon was hidden, and only a few faint lights lit up part of the yard. As I watched the corn leaves swaying gently, I heard a sound that made me freeze. A scream. It wasn't just any noise, nor something that could be mistaken for an animal. It was sharp, desperate, like a child crying for help. It came from deep within the cornfield, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly where. I stood still for a few seconds, doubting whether I had really heard it. But then the scream came again, clearer, more urgent. Without thinking, I ran inside the house, grabbed my rifle, the one I always kept for safety, and rushed back to the yard. My heart was pounding, not just from the adrenaline, but from the real fear that someone was in danger. I jumped over the fence, ignoring the darkness, and stepped between the rows of corn. The ground was damp, my boots sinking slightly, but I kept going, calling out, "Hello? Is someone there? Answer me if you can hear me." But there was no reply. I walked a few more yards, guided only by my phone's flashlight, which didn't help much. The silence became heavy, like the whole field had stopped breathing. Suddenly, everything around me felt tighter, more oppressive. The corn, so tall, didn't let me see beyond a few steps. The feeling of being trapped started to grow. I decided to go back. I rushed out of the cornfield, breathless, and called the police from the porch. I told them what had happened, and though they were polite, I could sense doubt in their voices. About 30 minutes later, 2 officers arrived, checked the field with me, but found nothing. They told me it was probably an animal or just the wind playing tricks, but I knew it wasn't. It wasn't the wind, nor my imagination. That night when I went to bed, I no longer felt that peace I had before. I locked the windows tightly, secured the doors, and stayed there listening, in silence, in case that scream came again. I couldn't sleep. Something inside me knew what I heard was real, and if it was real, then something or someone was very close. The next morning the sky was still grey, as if the weather itself sensed something was wrong. I got up early, more out of restlessness than habit. I barely touched my coffee, my stomach was in knots, and I went out to the yard to check again. That's when I saw it. By the fence, right where I had jumped the night before, there were marks. Fresh footprints in the wet soil. They weren't mine. I knew it instantly. The size, the depth. Someone else had been there, and not long before sunrise. I crouched down, ran my hand over the damp earth, and it felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. That wasn't an animal. Someone, barefoot or wearing very light shoes, had walked up to my house. I stood up slowly, eyes fixed on those footprints. The fence was still closed, no sign that it had been opened or broken. That left me with only one possibility. Whoever had been there knew the land and knew how to approach without leaving a trace. I went back inside, grabbed the rifle and checked every corner of the house. Everything was as I had left it. No broken windows, no forced doors. But the peace, the very thing I came here searching for, no longer existed. I installed the yard light I had bought a few days earlier. I made sure it worked well when night fell. That night, I needed to see what was out there. During the day, I tried to keep busy. I fixed some things around the house, read a bit, even wrote a few lines I had been putting off. But no matter how hard I tried, every time I looked out the window, the field gave me just one thing in return. Silence. Silence and a strange certainty that I was not alone. As evening came, the yard light turned on. Its yellow glow covered part of the yard, but the cornfield remained there, unmoving, like it was waiting for something. I stayed there for hours, watching, not knowing exactly what I was hoping to see. But that night nothing happened. No screams, no strange noises, just the wind and my thoughts running in circles. But I knew it wasn't over. The footprints, that presence, everything pointed to this just beginning. A few days passed quietly, or at least that's what I tried to believe. The routine helped keep my mind off things, but every night, as I looked out the window, something inside me tensed. It was like the field was waiting for the right moment to speak again, to remind me I shouldn't feel at ease. One night, just as I was about to fall asleep, I got up to close a window I had left slightly open. That's when something caught my eye. A figure, motionless, right where the cornfield met the fence. For a moment I thought it was my reflection, or maybe some object placed oddly. But no, that shape didn't move, yet it wasn't part of the house or the field. I stood there, holding my breath. The yard light partially lit the area, but the shadow stood just out of reach. I wanted to believe it was a scarecrow, but why had I never noticed it before? Why now? I grabbed the flashlight, went outside, and pointed it toward where I had seen the figure. Nothing. Just the wind rustling the corn leaves as if mocking me. I went back inside, but I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't sleep that night. I sat, watching, waiting for something else to happen. And it did. 2 nights later, as I was finishing an email, I felt something. It wasn't a loud noise, nor a knock. It was that feeling of being watched, that discomfort that forces you to turn around. I walked to the window, and there it was again, the same figure. Closer this time. I couldn't make out its face, but I knew it was looking at me. It didn't move, just stood there, as if waiting for me to do something. I couldn't help it. I went out, flashlight and rifle in hand. I walked slowly toward the fence, but before I could reach it, the figure vanished. I didn't chase after it, I couldn't. Something told me that's exactly what it wanted, for me to step into the cornfield at night. I went back into the house, locked everything, and sat down, waiting. But nothing else happened. From that moment on, every night became a battle. Sleeping was impossible, and the idea of being alone, facing something I didn't understand, consumed me. And that's when I realized I was trapped. No matter how much I tried to ignore it, that field and whatever was in it would not leave me in peace. Tap the icon of the yellow lamp and stay with us so we can uncover these disturbing mysteries together. After that night, the figure didn't appear again. 3 days passed in a strange silence, as if everything had just been a bad dream. but deep down, I knew something was building. That calm was nothing more than the pause before something worse. Friday night felt different. The wind blew harder and thick clouds blanketed the sky. I chose not to go outside. I sat down to watch TV, trying to distract myself, but I couldn't focus. It was like all my senses were on edge, waiting for something. And then I saw it. A reflection, a light that shouldn't have been there, flickered through the window. I ran over, and when I looked out, my blood ran cold. Flames were rising from the cornfield. They weren't big yet, but with that wind, I knew they'd spread fast. Without thinking, I grabbed the hose by the side of the house, dialed 911 on my phone, and jumped the fence straight into the fire. The smoke hit me hard. I coughed, struggling to control the flames that had already reached the first rows of corn. I fought the fire, but something told me I wasn't alone. I looked up for a second, and there it was. In the window of my bedroom, on the 3rd floor, a silhouette. Someone was watching me. I dropped the hose, letting the water pour on its own, and ran back to the house. My mind couldn't process how it was possible. I was outside, trying to put out the fire, and someone else was inside. I rushed up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, rifle in hand, checking every room. Everything was a mess. The kitchen looked ransacked, drawers open, dishes shattered on the floor, the fridge empty. Worst of all, the front door was ajar, swaying in the wind. I ran to it but saw no one, just silence again, and the sinking feeling that I was too late. The police and fire department arrived minutes later. The fire was almost out, the hose still spilling water onto the ground, forming dark puddles. I told them everything, and this time they didn't doubt me. Someone had been there, someone who knew exactly how to get me out, how to make me vulnerable. But what they didn't know, and what I couldn't understand, was why. What did this person want? Why me? That night, I didn't close my eyes for a second. I sat there, rifle across my lap, waiting, fearing, knowing this wasn't over. The police stayed until late, checking every corner of the house and the land. They found no clear signs of forced entry, but there was one thing they couldn't ignore. The main breaker, the one that controlled all the electricity in the house, was soaked. Someone had thrown a bucket of water right on it, cutting off all the power just before the fire. It was planned. While they took photos, wrote notes, and spoke over the radio, I could only think of one thing. This person knew me. Knew that if I saw the lights go out, I'd go outside and they'd have their chance to get in. It was all deliberate. One of the officers asked if I had any enemies, if I'd had problems with anyone recently. I told him no, that I'd only been here a couple of months, that I didn't know anyone. I told them about the scream, the footprints, the figure in the field. They wrote it down, but their faces showed the same doubt as always. What if it was just a drifter? Someone looking to steal something, but I knew it wasn't. They recommended I install cameras, upgrade my locks, and told me to call immediately if anything strange happened again. They left at dawn, leaving me alone in a house that no longer felt like mine, but violated. Days passed, but the tension didn't fade. Every night, at the slightest sound, I'd jump up armed. The creak of wood, the wind rattling the window, everything made me flinch. I checked every corner of the house again and again, making sure no one was hiding, but the feeling of being watched never left. I tried to keep up my routine, but nothing was the same. I couldn't work, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything else. I'd spend hours at the window, staring at that cornfield, waiting for something, anything, to move. And even though I didn't see anything, I knew he was still there. Because when someone wants into your life, they don't have to be there all the time. All they need is to make you feel like they could show up at any moment, and they've got you. It felt like time had stopped. 3 days passed without incident, and though the house was still a mental battleground, I started to believe maybe he had gone. I kept telling myself it had all been a scare, that with the police involved, he wouldn't dare come back, until he did. It was an unusually silent night. No wind, no crickets, not even the usual rustle of the field. That kind of silence that weighs heavy, that fills your ears with nothing. I was sitting in the living room, doing nothing, just waiting for sleep to come. when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, dragging, just outside. I froze, gripping the rifle tight. The yard light was on, but it didn't reach beyond the fence. I moved to the window, careful not to touch the curtain, and waited. And then I felt it. A touch. Someone brushed their hand against the window, slowly, like they wanted to make sure I was still there. I crouched instinctively, holding my breath. I didn't dare move or make a sound. I knew if I turned on the light, if I made the slightest noise, he'd know exactly where I was. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps faded away. I ran to the door, opened it carefully, and saw no one. Just the field, the corn as still as ever. But when I looked down, I saw something that made me freeze. A rope. Thick, old, worn rope. Exactly like one I'd seen long ago in another place, when I still lived with my parents. I picked it up with trembling hands, and a chill ran through my entire body. It couldn't be, not after all these years. I went back inside, locking every door. I sat on the floor, staring at that rope, and the memories hit me like a punch. There was no way someone else had one just like it. Impossible, unless it was him. The same man who chased me through the corn when I was a kid. The one who almost caught me. That night, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't just some thief or vagrant. This was personal. Something had found me again, and this time it wasn't going to let me go so easily. I spent the whole night sitting there, the rope in my hands, afraid that if I let it go, something worse would happen. There was no denying what I felt. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, older, that had been buried inside me for years, waiting to come out. I remembered that day, when I was just 9, living with my parents on a farm north of Kansas City. It was a place like this, surrounded by endless cornfields. They always told me not to go in, that it was easy to get lost. And one day, I disobeyed. My bike broke down, and I decided to cut through the field. That's where I saw him for the first time. A man, tall, thin, clothes dirty and torn. His arms were cut, and his eyes were empty. He told me he'd help me find the way, but his voice, the way he walked, everything about him screamed danger. I ran like never before, leaving my bike, my stuff, everything. I hid in the corn, hearing him shout my name, searching. "I'm going to find you," he kept saying over and over. That rope, it was the same one he held in his hand back then. I never forgot it. In time, my parents decided to move. They said it was for our safety, but we knew it was out of fear. They never caught him. We never knew who he was. And now, after all these years, it was all coming back, as if he had been waiting, following my steps, until he found me again. The police didn't understand. They told me it was impossible, that no one would follow someone for so many years, across so many places. But I knew it was him, and he was closer than ever. I tried to find information, something that might give me a clue, but there was nothing. No reports, no signs. Just my memories, and the terror of knowing I wasn't crazy, that what I lived through, what I was facing now, was as real as the cold I felt every night. I trusted no one anymore. I knew this wasn't going to stop, that the only way out was to leave, to give up everything once again. But something held me back, the need to understand why. Why me? What did he want from me? And most of all, when would he return? After everything that had happened, there was nothing keeping me in that house. The thought of spending one more night there, with that presence lurking, was unbearable. I thought about it for hours, pacing the same room that now felt foreign, like it no longer belonged to me. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I began to pack. I didn't have much, just a few bags, some papers and clothes. Most of my things I left behind. They weren't worth it. I didn't care about material things. I just wanted to get away, to disappear. As I closed the boxes, every sound felt like an echo. The creak of the floor, the doors shifting with the wind. Everything made me hesitate, as if at any moment he might appear, staring at me from the doorway, from the window, from the cornfield. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out into the yard one last time. The field was still there, just like always, still waiting. But this time, I didn't stay to watch. I walked to the car, tossed the bags into the back seat, and without looking back, started the engine. Driving down that dirt road, my heart pounded so hard it seemed to fill the whole car. I didn't breathe easy until I saw the cornfield disappear in the rearview mirror. And even then, peace didn't come. I arrived in Dallas that same night. I rented a small apartment downtown, surrounded by people, by noise, by lights, the complete opposite of the silence of the countryside. I felt out of place but safe, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. I never looked back at that house. I didn't want to know. I changed my number, cut ties with anything that reminded me of that place, but no matter how far I went, something stayed with me. Every time I close my eyes, I see that rope. I feel the cold of those nights. And in my mind, there's always that question that won't let me sleep. What would have happened if I hadn't left? Did I really escape, or am I just waiting for him to find me again? It's been months since I left that house, but the calm I was searching for never came. I live in a small apartment, in a neighborhood where there's always movement. Here, there are no cornfields, no old fences, no shadows waiting on the other side of the glass. Just streets, cars, and people coming and going, unaware of what hides in the dark. But sometimes, just when I think I've left it all behind, something reminds me. It could be a noise in the middle of the night, a shadow in the wrong place, or even a dream where I'm walking through the corn again, feeling those footsteps behind me. I wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, and no matter how much I look around and see that I'm safe, I can't help but wonder, am I really? There are nights when I get up and walk to the window. I look at the street, the light posts, the trees swaying in the breeze. And though I know there's nothing there, I always feel that gaze, that presence I first met as a child, that came back when I least expected it, and that somehow still follows me. I don't know who he was, or why he chose me. I never knew his name or his reasons. All I know is that he marked me, that he got what he wanted, to live in my head, in my memories, in every corner of my fear. Sometimes I wonder if it was all real. If that figure, that rope, the fire, everything was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then I remember the details, the moments, the terror so real it still steals my breath. And I know it wasn't imagination. Someone was there. Someone was looking for me. And even though I'm far away now, even though the streets of Dallas are full of noise, of people, of life, I can't let my guard down. Because fear doesn't disappear. It only changes form, and there's something that never lets me rest. I didn't see him leave. I didn't see him walk away. I just escaped. I just ran, like when I was a kid, hiding among the rows of corn, hoping it would all end. But what if he hasn't finished? What if he's still looking for me? What if one day, when I open the door, he's there,